And thank you all for being here today. Character Mode DataFlex has a very special place in my heart. After graduating from college back in the early 90s, my first job was working with Character Mode DataFlex. And the first project I ever led was the development and release of DataFlex 3.1c. And even at that time, I felt that there were not many development tools around that in the pre-internet era, which could, where you could go ahead and develop enterprise class business applications and cross-platform too, across multiple Unix versions, as you all know. In my mind, Character Mode DataFlex was Java before Java. You wrote the program once on one platform, and as long as you had the same type of byte specs for your processor, you could go ahead and run it on any other Unix platform, and it would run the same way. It was a solid, comprehensive product and found a place in enterprise as a reliable way to build business applications, especially in sectors that required fast data entry. So the proof is that some of the largest enterprise customers using DataFlex still today are on Character Mode. Though they have switched their applications to run with Oracle using our drivers, I am still surprised by the fact that so many people rely on Character Mode DataFlex to run their enterprises. So today, as these customers are looking to move to the cloud and modernize their IT infrastructure, the DataFlex Character Mode system, which had the strength of being cross-platform at the time, poses them new challenges. The challenge arises primarily from the fact that DataFlex is a closed system. You cannot call into DataFlex from other applications. Very limited options for you to call out of DataFlex. Really, after opening up the database, that's been the only freedom for people using DataFlex. So what do you do with the closed system that is no longer being developed by the vendor? So that's been another big challenge. Today's presentation is about addressing those challenges and also introducing to you something that our team has come up over the past few months that I think is very exciting and could breathe new life into the product. So let's start with the business challenges. What are the business challenges that companies are facing? And in my conversation with director of IT, CIOs of these enterprise entities, what we find, number one concern is that it's a dead-end product. What by dead-end by mean is that the product has not been updated in nearly 20 years. It's not being actively developed. It's being sold. There is some partial support available through the DataFlex forum. But if you are looking to do something new, it's not going to happen. It's a product that's pretty much has had the end of its life. It's truly a legacy product in that way. The second concern that they list is there's a skill shortage, and that's understandable. This is a product that is from a different time. Character Mode applications were before Windows became popular. Now in the internet era, all the applications people are developing are browser-based or mobile. And the skill shortage is a big concern. Programmers are retiring or have moved on, and younger developers do not want to learn an obsolete tool. That's a given. The third challenge they say is the integration challenges, where they want to integrate their existing application business logic that they have captive in this closed DataFlex system, and they want to call it from other systems. So other applications, or they're developing new cloud-based operations, and they feel, hey, there is a large complex module that's already doing this calculation that is important to our process, but I cannot call it from anywhere. And that's been one of the challenges that is hard to overcome without rewriting the code. And the fourth concern they have is that uncertain future from the view that what happens if the developer, and often in the companies there's only one or two developers working on these projects, what happens 5 years from now or 10 years from now when they retire? And really the trend that I'm seeing is that the companies take a bunch of different paths, and one of the paths is they completely give up what they have. They have to just dump it. And I'm going to go over that in a new slide. So the challenge is that, if you are thinking about the future of your company, and if your enterprise depends on running these Character Mode systems as a critical component of your IT infrastructure, then how are you going to manage that risk in the future? So really, what are the options for companies looking to move on from a closed DataFlex system? Well, number one is, we have seen it. they move on to a packaged solution. Now, packaged solutions, meaning these are, SAPs of the world, they're not always readily available in the market you're in or the sector you're addressing. So, and if they are available, then they are very expensive and requires a lot of changes to your business processes sometimes to adapt your business to the packaged solution. And the cost, you all know, the cost of these enterprise systems are really, really high. So not only are you taking on a more expensive product, but you're also increasing the risk in making changes to your business logic, business processes, and acquiring new expertise in that. The second option that people follow is they rewrite using a new tool. Why? Because they want to follow a path which has mainstream programming languages. So a path most commonly followed, if you're on Linux, the people try to go with Java. And if they are on Windows, they try to go with C#. That's kind of the trend we have seen. However, rewriting in a new tool is also very expensive. Often because the people developing or redeveloping the system do not understand how DataFlex really works and how much of the DataFlex program is dependent on the DataFlex libraries. So then they look at a piece of code and they see, well, there are 5,000 lines of code, say, for example. Well, that may leverage about 40,000 lines of DataFlex code that works a certain way. So these kind of rewrites often end up getting very expensive and also have unpredictable outcomes, uncertain outcomes rather, and that is the time they project initially never always comes out to be what they projected. I know of one company that started undertaking rewriting the DataFlex system, character mode DataFlex system in Java, running on Linux. And I think it took them about 7 to 9 years in that range with a team of 7 or 8 programmers working on it full time. That's a pretty expensive cost. The third option that people follow is that they rewrite their application in Visual DataFlex, which is the new current version of DataFlex available. It's Windows-based, so if you're on Linux or any other platform, you'll have to move to Windows and develop on Visual DataFlex. And people often think that this is also a straightforward path. Well, it does seem like on the surface, it seems like it will save you some time because you might be able to reuse some of the code. But remember, if you're on character mode DataFlex, that's 20 years old. The new version of DataFlex has had a lot of changes in the language structure. So not only will have to change some of the command structures and the program, but you will also have to break apart your application, which may be a procedural style code that goes on for 500 lines. You'll have to break it up and put it into this new framework, object-oriented framework in DataFlex, and work with it. So if the programming skill set is not there in understanding and architecting the system, then you will end up with also a similar cost and overheads, and that becomes a challenge as well. So often the companies, this is a conversation I had with a customer. We said that, well, if I'm going to save only 25 to 30% of time over rewriting in a new mainstream tool, why should I consider DataFlex, where I will be 5 years, 10 years from now, I will still have the same issue of programmer shortages. DataFlex is not a mainstream development tool. The challenges will still be there. So these are usually the 3 options that companies have right now. But is there another option? And this is really what got us involved in that. And we were discussing with some of our customers these challenges. What we felt was that, okay, well, it's really a shame that these guys who invested such a large amount of money over a period of time using their products and are using our DataFlex, our database drivers for Oracle or MySQL or Postgres on Linux, for example, are going to dump this whole system and move on to something new developed by some other company who may not have as much knowledge about DataFlex. So we felt that the best option for them would be that what if we could provide something that will open up the system now and give them a path forward in a more incremental way without taking on the risk and uncertainty associated with either a packaged solution or a programming rewrite. And that is really what our presentation today is about. And we have been able to, over the past year and a half or so, we've been working on some of these things. We built some new products. As you know, Thriftly .io platform that we have. And then our team came up with a new product, new technology. I would not call it a product, it's a technology. And we call it Thriftly LT. And LT stands for Legacy Transformation. And what it really does is that it's a way to run turn DataFlex programs into service-oriented architecture. And Oliver will go into a little bit of detail on how it all works. It allows you to, and this is very important, allows you to call the service APIs directly from C#, Java, JavaScript, and other languages as if they were just any other application. And this approach is very common when you're working with other application development tools. Third, it is platform independent. The way we built it, it actually supports both console mode application as well as Linux application, and I think potentially it can run on any Unix platform as well. And currently we are offering it as a service plus technology because the market size is not there for it to be a complete product, but this is something we are open to discussing with customers. So by taking a service-oriented approach, we felt that not only are we opening up the DataFlex system, a closed DataFlex system, into something more modern, but it also allows you to really get to the heart of your programming, your business logic, and use it immediately from other languages. And that makes it very useful because the pressure to rewrite this complex logic and go through the full software development life cycle of testing and development and bug fixes and all of that completely goes out the door. Further, this has immediate impact on your business. You don't have to wait 5 years for a program to be written and to be used. You can start using it now. In fact, you can start using it in parallel with your existing character mode system. And that's really what Thriftly LT is all about. And I'm going to hand it over to Oliver to give you a demo about the product, and then we'll go into a little bit more details of how this all works. Oliver?
Hi, everyone. Very excited to show Thriftly LT to you today. To get started, let me get a desktop shared here. Okay, so to get us started here, we're going to open up an old console mode based application, in this case here on Windows. And this is a medical billing application. And this application is actually one that ended up being a very good test for our technology here, because it's written in a rather old style of DataFlex. In fact, this application doesn't even make use of the intergroup macro, for those of you who remember some of this stuff and work with it regularly. So this is a very old style DataFlex application, and it shows that this Thriftly LT technology was really meant to work across a broad range of applications, from this style all the way into object-oriented DataFlex applications. And so this application, here, I'll just go ahead and show it to you, pull up a record in it here. And let's go to Tony. And so it's a rather, straightforward application, but there are some complexities in it that are common to these character mode applications, with pieces of the screen that maybe appear and disappear based on what's on the screen, and lots of different paths through the code base, things like that. So we're not really going to spend much time on this application specifically, but just to show you, this is a multi-thousand line application here. And so now we're going to show you what this application looks like after having gone through our Thriftly LT services. And one of the things that you'll notice here is that we come up to a list rather than coming up to a data entry screen. This list is the first screen that you'll see, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But this is that character mode application running here. So let's go in and pull up Tony Cabrera here, and we can go in and change this to East West Street, and we can save the record here. And that saved it through that backend system. And in fact, I'm running this right now through like a developer mode. So let's actually see what occurred here. So we're going to go ahead and open up this right here, which is that same application, just running through our Thriftly LT stack. And what we're going to do here is go ahead and pull up a record. So we'll pull up Tony again. And you'll see the record was pulled up here. The data is entered here. We can go in here and let's just correct that to something more along those lines and save the record. And you'll see that that operation took place in the background. Our list has been updated here. We're back to this here. And in fact, this is a working application here that's being controlled by the Thriftly LT technology. And really that's what Thriftly LT is. Now, this application, we have it open in this sort of demo mode where it's showing the old console mode application. In a production environment, you wouldn't see this screen. That would all be handled by the Thriftly LT technology stack to keep track of what's running and all of that sort of thing. So you normally wouldn't see this. But all of the business logic that was held in this application is now exposed through this web application. Wherever I go in here, you can see that it's going to pull up in the background that same record, whatever the business rules were associated with that record. You know, maybe different fields show on the screen, different things come and go based on what we're dealing with here. All of that is transitioned into this web-based application that is then exposed as an API and has Thriftly sitting there as well to make that API available out onto the web. So that is what Thriftly LT is. So let's go ahead and switch back to our slides here. I think they're over here. And let's talk about how this technology works for just a little bit. So a few things to know. As Riaz had mentioned, Thriftly LT is a multi-platform solution. It works on right now on Linux and Windows. And in fact, our prototyping for this product was done on Linux originally, although at this point the Windows version of it is what we've focused on recently. And this tech works with multiple versions of DataFlex. It's not just limited to a single revision of DataFlex. It works across a pretty broad range of DataFlex versions, which of course is important since some of these applications may be trapped for various reasons at a specific revision there. And Thriftly LT is really meant to be this minimally invasive wrapper around existing applications. It's not just a screen scraper either. It knows about the DataFlex application itself. It knows what it contains. And this allows us to work with DataFlex applications without having to make significant changes to the code base. The technique we're using internally for all of this relates to some of the technology that we developed with Thriftly over the years, and even some of our flex to crystal expertise came into it as well. So the things that we had learned there, those products taught us how to work within some of the limitations that are imposed by these older software systems. And over the years, our teams have gotten very good at doing that sort of thing. Now, you'll notice that the entry screen there is quite different from the console mode entry screen, but it has all the basic stuff that was originally there. And really, that's because with the Thriftly LT services, we take this sort of design-first approach that's quite specialized to this technology stack. Our UI experts work along with application architects to come up with a user experience and user interface language that not only fits the application, but also fits within what Thriftly LT is going to have to expose as an API. Another thing to note about Thriftly LT is that a lot of these console mode applications had this real strong focus on data entry speed. And that's something that we didn't want to lose. Thriftly LT is very fast. The technology stack doesn't add overhead, very much overhead into the application. And there are still things that are done in those console mode applications that we can transition over as well. For instance, a lot of those applications would, the developers would focus on exactly how many key presses were required for certain operations. And they would try and optimize that key press count. Well, when you go to the web, some of that does change, of course. But our UI teams try to make these trade-offs that occur when you go to the web as painless as possible and really keep that focus on data entry speed. And that's done with a variety of techniques, including things like adding some features that may have not been in the original application related to autocomplete, for instance. You'll see here if I come in here and start typing, I've got an autocomplete list that's come up here, even though the original application didn't quite have that feature in there. Now, we do try and use as much of the business logic as possible. And what we found is that in most cases, we can basically save all of the important operations that were in that application. All of that can be retained pretty easily using Thriftly LT. But there are certain areas where changes do need to occur, such as in lookup lists, this autocomplete sort of thing, tables sometimes. And in those cases, we would replace some of that with SQL calls. And normally this would be written in C#. Thriftly, of course, enables us to do the Thriftly stack itself, enables us to write those additional features in C# and create a unified interface between the Thriftly LT technology stack and Thriftly itself, so that the API is basically indistinguishable whether you're dealing with a legacy interface using Thriftly LT or a new C# API using Thriftly. And basically that allows us to build these applications that have all of this original business logic in it while maintaining a very fast development pace. Now, to do that, these applications do have to undergo a conversion to use our drivers because we do need to put in some SQL calls in there as well, as we mentioned, for some of those operations. And so really the Thriftly LT stack has to be paired with our Mertech drivers so that that can be enabled from whatever the API languages are that you're using, so that we have access to that data as well. And if we go forward a slide, this kind of shows what the Thriftly LT technology stack looks like. So the underlying FLXs that your application depends on, those remain there. Those are operating in DataFlex still, and Thriftly LT sits on top of that as a wrapper for those that then gives you the APIs that you're going to call from outside on a web-based application. Of course, you're not limited to calling these on the web. You could just as easily consume these APIs in a C# application or a Java application, whatever your needs are from that standpoint, you can do because you have that API. So it kind of opens that whole arena up as to what your path forward is for your development. And really, as Riaz mentioned, this allows for a gradual transition and a sort of hybrid model. And it's not meant really to be a permanent solution. Instead, it allows this sort of gradual move from DataFlex to C#, for instance, but very quickly you're able to get this modernized UI that can be deployed in a very short amount of time. And that really is what Thriftly LT is about. Riaz?
All right, Oliver, thank you. I have a couple of questions. I think that would be interesting to our discussions with the, how is the data interchange between the API and the FLX? What format does it use?
It's putting the data in just whatever the format was in your application. So it's in most cases, your APIs are going to be exposed via a JSON sort of API, for instance. And then Thriftly LT handles all the translation to get it into your FLXs for you.
So Thriftly LT serves JSON objects to the external caller.
Correct. JSON and any of the other protocols that Thriftly will handle as well.
And that's the standard way where web application usually exchange data, right? As
yes.
JSON objects, all right? And what API protocols are supported? Is RESTful? Are the APIs RESTful?
So there's a JSON REST API protocol. There's an RPC based JSON RPC is in there, along with the Thriftly binary APIs, the Thrift binary, Apache Thrift binary, and also gRPC is supported in Thriftly LT as well, which is Google, based on Google's protocol buffers. It's an RPC version of that.
All these are supported simultaneously, or you pick which protocol you want to use?
They're all supported simultaneously, so you don't have to make that choice up front. If you have an application stack that's going to be very diverse. For instance, maybe you're going to have part of your application that's really transitioning to a mobile app while the rest of it is staying as maybe some other sort of desktop app or web app. You can mix and match the protocols based on what's going to be the most efficient over the line or the easiest to implement in that language.
Okay. And you're able to call the API directly from JavaScript frameworks as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So for web applications, obviously, that you can develop new web application front end, like the example you showed. That's the front end is developed in Angular, I believe.
Yes, this is an Angular based application here, and just with JSON calls that are occurring.
Yeah. By the way, this application that Oliver is showing is an actual customer application that we are currently working on, and we took their permission to show what we have done. And essentially, in their case, this code base goes back 30 years plus, if not more, and they were at a crossroad. They didn't know what to do. I mean, they were looking at rewriting, but they felt like nobody gave them a clear answer on how they would go, what will be the outcome, what will be the cost. And when we presented this solution, this was something that they felt that they could immediately, start using it. They can create a new web offering, even a cloud-based solution, SaaS solution, using this, and then they could modernize over a period of time rather than to feel the pressure to do something now. There is a business impact of not taking action sooner, and that is the cost of business. So a lot of new customers, if you're trying to expand your business, if you're an ISV, you will have a very hard time selling a character mode application to customers today. Customers want SaaS-based solution, mobile device that run across multiple devices, and that is what makes it very difficult and a dead end for a lot of customers. I know a lot of ISVs here in the US, not a lot, but there are some still on character mode, and they just do not know what to do, and they're down to one or two people programming on the system, but they have written pretty sophisticated system that is being used by a lot of customers, but there is no path forward. So this gives them a path forward in many different directions. One question I have, Oliver, for you is that we showed different languages in that slide you showed with the different languages.
Yes.
You would be able to still call this from a Visual DataFlex program.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've already undertaken part of that rewrite and you have some of the application in DataFlex. Of course, in Visual DataFlex, this gives you a way of calling that as well.
All right. Okay, you had another slide, Oliver, to show? Okay.
No, just this one.
All right, so as you saw, like, I laid out some of the business challenges that we see the customers are facing. We see that the customers are either switching to a completely packaged solution that they decide we're not going to develop applications in-house, to rewriting everything in one way or the other, and taking on enormous cost and risk in doing that. So what we are presenting today here is another way forward, is something that will have immediate impact on your business. You can start using it today, or you start, and then over a period of time, you can decide which direction you want to go. So how does it help you today? Well, first is, like, as we mentioned, you can call your programs like any other API. The connected world today is being powered by APIs. The reason one application talks to another application today is an API. API is not something new. You guys who have been in programming for a long time know. It's just APIs have been around from the very beginning of computer science. They're called SDKs, libraries, whatever they're called. But these APIs are essentially web APIs, meaning an API, a program interface that you can call across the internet. And of course, there are different protocols and how you handle that, and that's something Thriftly handles for you. You can now build mobile application and web application in mainstream technologies and call directly into your DataFlex character mode application. I can tell you that this is something that if people had thought about it just yesterday before this presentation, would say, well, yeah, there may be a way where we dump out the text file, do this, but directly calling business logic was impossible. Well, you can do that now. And you can undertake incremental modernization. You can move this API-driven system to the cloud, to any kind of a cloud infrastructure, and call it from a central location. All of that becomes possible when you undertake this kind of transformation. Now, a few years, 20 years ago, when I remember presenting the first DataFlex driver to the community, that was the first little bit of opening. A lot of companies who were thinking about moving out of DataFlex stayed because they felt like, hey, our immediate need is that I want to access my data from other applications, or I want to access my data from different reporting tools. And by moving to an Oracle or MySQL or Postgres, or even our first version of our DB2 drivers, whatever they were using, it was possible for them to free up some of the pressures their organization felt. And we feel that this is going to be one of those things that it will allow you to relieve some of those immediate demands that you face from your businesses, from your customers, and you can move forward in an incremental with low risk, low cost option. Any questions at this point?
We do have a few questions that people have been asking, so we'll get started on those. The first one is, what do we need to do to call the application from our C# application?
So essentially what we do is we create an API. If we go back here, what we're doing is creating an API that sits on top of the existing FLX, and that's directly callable from the outside world. So because of the Thriftly technology stack that's involved here, that's something that's exposed onto the internet if you want. So, there may be some work that has to be done in relation to security, for instance. But that API is directly callable from C# just by exposing it using Thriftly LT. And we have, as part of our technology services with it, basically we build these APIs that sit on top of the existing applications.
Okay. Next question is there any performance impact?
There, of course, is going to be some performance impact. It doesn't come entirely free, but we've seen speeds that are, well into the hundreds of calls per second sort of scenario with this without any problem. I think on higher end hardware, it would easily go into the thousands without an issue. So, you know, one of the benefits of these character mode and console mode applications is that in general, they were very fast. And this doesn't slow them down at all. So if the application was very fast, then you can expect it to still be very fast with Thriftly LT wrapping that application as well. There's not like some sort of big interpreter overhead to deal with or things like that. So, you know, if your application is fast, this will be fast as well.
Okay, great. Another question that we have here, how do we deploy this system in a cloud infrastructure?
So basically, if we, again, looking at this diagram, if we look at just this bottom half here, this is all meant to be cloud deployable. So the Thriftly LT stack and with DataFlex sitting underneath it with your applications there, that can go into, for instance, an Azure instance or an Amazon instance without any problem. Or if we were dealing with the Linux version of it, it could go onto Google's cloud platform as well. Or Linode or any of those others. So all of those cloud platforms can support this structure without any issue at all, and run that underlying DataFlex application without an issue. So the deployment ends up being pretty easy.
Thanks, Oliver. It looks like we have a two-part question now. That question being, how do we handle making changes to the DataFlex code, and does it change how you build the APIs?
So that ends up being one of the trickier pieces here, but something to keep in mind is that very often what ends up changing in these applications is not the user interface. It's not the screens that change. It's some back-end business rule. And all of that business logic, Thriftly LT doesn't even really know about the business logic. It calls that underlying business logic as is. So if a change is made to that business logic and there isn't an interface change, then it'll just work. There won't be any issue at all. And so those sorts of changes are very painless. Where there are actual interface changes, we have a series of tools that basically help with detecting that sort of thing and updating the API for it as well, so that process also is not too painful. But in general, what we've seen companies do is they go, okay, well, we're going to freeze some of this development here, and new development is going to go into a C# application or something like that. And so they'll use the opportunity for applications needing overhauls that way as, okay, we're going to rewrite this module, that sort of thing, as that gradual transition that we talked about earlier progresses.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions we have so far, but I just wanted to extend that offer again. If anyone has any outstanding questions that we have not addressed yet, please go ahead and drop those into the chat section so we can answer those. We have a little time left to address those.
And just a couple other notes while people may be thinking about this a little bit. With the Mertech drivers sitting underneath this, that means that your database can be cloud-based as well. So it could be running, for instance, in an Azure SQL database, or on Amazon. It could be using their hosted Postgres or MySQL solutions that they have out there as well. So that is a cloud-managed database rather than a full server that you have to manage. So those sorts of costs associated with managing your own servers, maybe hosting for other customers, can be reduced by putting the driver underneath the DataFlex application as well, and enabling the use of those services there.
Okay, it looks like at this time we don't have any additional questions. If anyone thinks of anything, please feel free to email the team, and we will also be sending out the recording of the webinar.
Yeah. All right, if anybody has any questions after they've had time to think about some of the things we showed today, please contact me, riazm@mertech.com, or Oliver N@mertech.com, and we'll be glad to help you and answer your questions in any way possible. Thank you.